sparks are in the air. Another day is breaking. Yesterday is gone in the light of dawn. It's new beginnings. The day is sounding, singing a new song. Hear the angels echo. We are love beyond the raging sea. You're the life inside me. I lift my hands and I rejoice. There's a reason that I come alive. Let's come alive. Rejoice for a hope that starts a fire in us, bright in us. Rejoice. You're the reason that I come alive. Let's come alive. Rejoice. Rejoice. Shining in the dark. Your love is amazing. You can take a broken heart and tear it apart and hear it beating. Can you feel the mountains tremble at his name? Hear the angels echo. We are love beyond the raging sea. You're the life inside me. I lift my hands and I rejoice. There's a reason that I come alive. Let's come alive. Rejoice for a hope that starts a fire in us, bright in us. Rejoice. You're the reason that I come alive. Let's come alive. Rejoice. Rejoice. Your mercy, your power, your love takes us higher. My Savior, Redeemer, you're reaching for me. Your mercy, your power, your love takes us higher. My Savior, Redeemer, you're reaching for me. Rejoice, there's a reason that I come alive. Let's come alive. Rejoice for a hope that starts a fire in us, bright in us. Rejoice, you're the reason that I come alive. Let's come alive. Rejoice. 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 There's a reason that I come alive. For a hope that starts a fire in us. Oh God, in you I will rejoice. Rejoice.
Good evening. Thank you for joining us on this very special occasion. I am Kimo Ayun, Provost, Marquette University, and I will be your Master of Ceremonies for today's special celebration. It is indeed a pleasure to welcome members of the Marquette community and our community friends to this grand occasion as we honor Father Gregory Boyle of the Society of Jesus. I would like to introduce Catherine Robertson, communications student, class of 21, to provide our invocation.
Let us pause and recall that we are in the holy presence of God. Good and gracious God, you made us all in your image to be brothers and sisters united in love. In you, we are all blessed, worthy, and deserving of life lived to the fullest. Be with us this mission week. We are in the midst of a pandemic. We hope for a future free from disease, inequality, divisiveness, and injustice, where the unity and dignity of all people is recognized. Bless Father Boyle and all at Homeboy Industries, who show us that all your children have worth beyond measure. Watch over Homeboy Industries, watch over all of us here today, and continue to shower your blessings over the Marquette community, that we might live as persons for and with others in truly radical kinship. We make this prayer through our Lord, who lives and reigns over all people, one God, forever and ever. Amen.
Thank you for that beautiful prayer, Catherine. It is now my privilege to introduce the 24th president of Marquette University, Dr. Michael Lovell.
Good evening. Thank you, Provost Ayoun, and thank you all for joining us as we begin the conferral of an honorary degree on Father Gregory Boyle. It's a pleasure to join you during this year's Mission Week. Mission Week's theme this year is Open to Hope. Remaining open to hope could be so difficult, especially during adverse circumstances. In Father Gregory Boyle's work with Homeboy Industries, he represented hope for a new beginning for so many. His work is a testament to the power of hope and the positivity in the face of adversity and uncertainty. As a Catholic Jesuit university, we are called to live as servant leaders to give ourselves to those in need. Father Boyle has done that and much, much more. I look forward to hearing from my colleagues and learning more about Father Boyle's many accomplishments as we move through this evening. With that, I turn it back over to Provost Ayoun.
To begin the conferring of the honorary degree, I present to you Dr. Jennifer Maney, Director of the Center for Teaching and Learning.
President Lovell, I commend to you Reverend Gregory J. Boyle of the Society of Jesus. Gregory J. Boyle of the Society of Jesus has spent his career as an exemplar of cura personalis and bringer of hope. A Jesuit priest, he is the founder of Homeboy Industries, which is the largest gang intervention, rehabilitation, and re-entry program in the world. A native of Los Angeles, from 1986 to 1992, Father Boyle served as pastor of Dolores Mission Church in Boyle Heights, then the poorest Catholic parish in Los Angeles, that also had the highest concentration of gang activity in the city. During his years as pastor, Father Boyle witnessed the devastating impact of gang violence firsthand and took courageous and compassionate action. In 1988, Father Boyle, along with parish and community members, started what eventually would become Homeboy Industries, whose mission is to provide hope, training, and support to formerly gang-involved and previously incarcerated men and women, allowing them to redirect their lives and become contributing members of their community. Homeboy Industries employs and trains former gang members in a wide range of social enterprises and provides critical services to men and women seeking a better life. Homeboy's holistic approach includes therapeutic and educational offerings, practical services like tattoo removal, and work readiness and job training focused social enterprises, serving thousands of men and women each year. The organization offers a path out of the cycles of violence and incarceration and helps people develop the strength and skills to transform their lives and create safer, healthier communities. Father Boyle has received numerous awards and recognitions, most notably the California Peace Prize, the 2017 Latari Medal from the University of Notre Dame, the oldest honor given to American Catholics, and the 2016 James Beard Foundation Humanitarian of the Year Award. In 2014, President Obama named Father Boyle a champion of change. Currently, he serves as a committee member of California Governor Gavin Newsom's Economic and Job Recovery Task Force in response to COVID-19. Father Boyle is the author of the 2010 New York Times bestseller, Tattoos on the Heart, The Power of Boundless Compassion. His second book, Barking to the Choir, The Power of Radical Kinship, was published in 2017. Because of his exemplary career as priest, CEO, writer, and entrepreneur, on behalf of our human family, President Lovell, I hereby recommend Reverend Gregory J. Boyle of the Society of Jesus for the Marquette University degree of Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa.
Reverend Gregory J. Boyle of the Society of Jesus, by the power vested in me by the state of Wisconsin and the trustees of Marquette University, I confer upon you the degree of Doctor of Humane Letters, honoris causa.
Congratulations, Father Boyle. We are so thankful for your work. This concludes our official degree ceremony. We will now listen to the inspiring words of Father Boyle as part of our special Ignite for Mission Week. It is my pleasure to present Father Boyle, advocate for justice and builder of communities, and the newest Marquette alum.
Thank you very much. It's indeed an honor to be recognized in this way, and I have a great admiration and love for Marquette. And thank you for this. You know, I sort of feel in solidarity with all the graduates who will receive this at the end of this year, and they too will receive it, and it'll be empty until you finish paying off your tuition. So let that be a lesson to you. There's a vision that undergirds all that you do at Marquette, and it's soaked with hope and the risen life. There's a vision of imagining a circle of compassion, and then imagine nobody standing outside that circle. You are sent from Marquette to dismantle the barriers that exclude. Martin Luther King said that what he said of church could be said of your time at Marquette. It's not the place you've come to, it's the place you go from. And you go from there to stand at the margins. And you are the only delivery system of hope that makes any sense. Hope is the thing with feathers that perches in the soul, that sings the song without the words and never stops at all. You go to the margins and you are anchored there, because that's the only way the margins will get erased, is if you stand out at them. Mother Teresa diagnosed the world's ills correctly when she suggested that the problem in the world is that we've just forgotten that we belong to each other. So how do we stand against forgetting that? How do we move out to the margins and stand with a particularity with the poor and the powerless and the voiceless? To choose to stand with those whose dignity has been denied and those whose burdens are more than they can bear. Every once in a while, you get so privileged to be able to stand with the easily despised and the readily left out. You get to stand with the demonized so that the demonizing will stop. And you stand with the disposable so that the day will come when we stop throwing people away. You stand at the margins and you brace yourselves, because indeed people will accuse you of wasting your time. But the prophet Jeremiah writes, "In this place of which you say it is a waste, there will be heard again the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voices of those who sing." You go to the margins and other voices get heard, for you are the only delivery system of hope that makes any sense. Human beings. And so we return people to themselves at the margins. If I go to the margins to make a difference, then it's about me, and it can't be about me. But if I go to the margins so that the folks at the margins make me different, then it's about us. And that's how hope is engendered. And then we choose to become the notice of God in the world. We choose to be tender as God is tender with us, the God who loves us without measure and without regret. 3 years ago, I buried my 92-year-old mother, and she had 8 kids. And I had buried my father some 25 years earlier. And she died the way all of us would like to, I think, surrounded by our family, our kids, our grandchildren, in her own bed, in her own home. And she was sharp as a tack till the very end. In fact, in her last year of her life, she watched so much MSNBC, she was becoming Rachel Maddow. And she wasn't a lick afraid of dying. In fact, about 3 weeks before she died, she looked at me and she was positively giddy. And she said, "I've never done this before," which is something you might say just before skydiving. In fact, the day before she died, I happened to be alone in her room and she was asleep. It never happened that I was there alone. And she woke up from her nap and she saw me there and she said, "Oh, for crying out loud." And she went back to sleep. Well, she was pissed off that she hadn't died yet. Sorry. But the next day, again, as luck would have it, I was there all by myself at the foot of her bed and she was asleep. And at exactly noon, she lifted her head and she opened her eyes and she let out this wondrous, glorious gasp. And she left us skydiving. And no one in earshot of that sound would ever be afraid of death again. But in the last weeks of her life, there'd be 2 of us or 5 of us or all 8 of the siblings, her kids, and she'd be in and out of consciousness. And when she would come to, she would lock on to one of us and she would say with breathless delight, "You're here. You're here." And all people at the margins want is for you to look them in the eye and to say, "You're here. You're here." The homies at Homeboy Industries often say that they're used to being watched, but they're not used to being seen. And so you try to see each other, which is how hope gets transmitted. There's a Buddhist saying, "Oh, nobly born, remember who you really are." And you want people to inhabit that truth, to become that truth. And then as you look in people's eyes and say, "You're here," everybody inhabits their mutual dignity and nobility. You see each other and people are filled with hope in an exquisitely mutual way. Every gang member, man and woman, who walks through our doors at Homeboy comes barricaded behind a wall of shame and disgrace. And the only thing that can scale that wall is tenderness, which is the methodology of hope. It is how we deliver it. Every gang member who walks through our doors at Homeboy Industries comes with a disorganized attachment. Mom was either frightened or frightening, and you can't calm yourself down if you've never been soothed. If it's true enough that the traumatized are more likely to cause trauma, it's equally true that the cherished will be able to find their way to the joy there is in cherishing themselves and others. And so we see each other. And Marquette is not the place you've come to. It will always be the place you go from. And you go from there to take seriously what Jesus took seriously, which lucky for us are only 4 things. They're big things, but only 4. Inclusion, nonviolence, unconditional loving kindness, and compassionate acceptance. We choose to be in the world who God is, tender. We notice the notice of God, and then we choose to be in the world who God is, compassionate, loving, and kind. At Homeboy Industries, we're kind of allergic to the notion of holding the bar up and asking gang members to measure up. Instead, we hold the mirror up and we seek to return people to themselves, to their goodness, which is unshakable. But you have to dismantle the messages of shame and disgrace that have bombarded their lives. There's an odd line in the Acts of the Apostles, and it says simply, "And awe came upon everyone." And it suggests that the measure of our health in any community at all may well reside in our ability to stand in awe at what the poor have to carry, rather than stand in judgment at how they carry it. A number of years ago, I was invited to speak to 600 social workers in Richmond, Virginia. And it was one of those in-service days from 9 to 5, and social workers commandeer a hotel ballroom, and they each get credit for workshops and breakout sessions and keynotes. So I'd done a lot of these, and I figured, they were inviting me to do a keynote, and then so I bought my ticket. But a week before I was to fly, I pulled out the original letter inviting me, and to my horror, I discovered that I was to be the only speaker from 9 to 5 all damn day. And I told myself what the homies often say, "Oh, hell no, I am not going to be the only speaker." So I pulled 2 homies, one of our trainees in our 18-month training program, Andre and Jose. They were from enemy gangs, and they were in their 9th month of their 18 months with us. And I sat them down and I said, "Look, at the end of the week, you're flying with me to Richmond, Virginia. I'd like you to get up and tell your stories. Take your time, because we got a long ass day to fill." Well, I'd never heard their stories, and Jose gets up first, and he's like 25 years old at the time, a gang member, been to prison, tattooed. At that juncture in his time with us, he had become a very valued member of our substance abuse team, a man solid in his own recovery, and now he's helping younger homies and homegirls with their addiction issues. So not only had he been in prison, but he also had a stretch as a homeless man and an even longer stretch as a heroin addict. And so he starts, and he looks at this group of 600 social workers, and he says, "I guess you could say my mom and me, we didn't get along so good. I think I was 6 when my mom looked at me and said, 'Why don't you just kill yourself? You're such a burden to me.'" Well, 600 social workers audibly gasped. And he says, "It sounds way worser in Spanish." And we got whiplash going from gasp to laugh. And then he continued, "I think I was 9 when my mom drove me down to the deepest part of Baja California, and she walks me up to an orphanage, and she knocks on the door, and the guy comes to the door, and she says, "I found this kid." And she left me there for 90 days until my grandmother could get out of her where she had dumped me, and my grandmother rescued me. My mom beat me every single day of my elementary school years with things you could imagine and a lot of things you couldn't. Every day, my back was bloodied and scarred. In fact, I had to wear 3 t-shirts to school each day. First t-shirt, because the blood would seep through, and second t-shirt, you could still see it. Finally, the third t-shirt, you couldn't see any blood. Kids at school, they'd make fun of me. "Hey, fool, it's 100 degrees. Why are you wearing 3 t-shirts?" And then he stopped speaking, so overwhelmed with emotion, and he seemed to be staring at a piece of his story that only he could see. And when he could regain his speech, he said through his tears, "I wore 3 t-shirts well into my adult years because I was ashamed of my wounds. I didn't want anybody to see them. But now I welcome my wounds. I run my fingers over my scars. My wounds are my friends. After all, how can I help heal the wounded if I don't welcome my own wounds?" And awe came upon everyone. The measure of our compassion lies not in our service of those on the margins, but only in our willingness to see ourselves in kinship with them. For the truth of the matter is this: if we don't welcome our own wounds, we may well be tempted to despise the wounded. We don't go to the margins to make a difference. We go to the margins so that the folks there make us different. God says in the covenant, "As I have loved you, so must you have a special preferential care and love for the widow, orphan, and the stranger." And these are the folks who, when those words were written, society saw as those who they could live without. They were the folks cut off. And Marquette is not the place you've come to, it's the place you go from to repair severed belonging, to foster and nurture a community of beloved belonging, to imagine a circle of compassion, and then imagine nobody standing outside that circle. Homeboy Industries was born a long time ago in 1988 when I was pastor of the poorest parish in the city, highest concentration of gang activity in the world, 8 gangs in the 2 housing projects which made up my parish, all at war with each other. I buried my first young person killed because of this sadness in 1988. And tomorrow, I will bury my 240th, a young man named Anthony Fierros, who I've known for a long time. So we did a lot of things. We started a jobs program and a school. And then we started social enterprises. And nobody intends to do such a thing, but we backed our way now into becoming the largest gang intervention rehab reentry program on the planet. 15,000 folks a year wander through our doors, and we try to see them. We try to welcome them so that they can feel safe. And then our concern is not surviving as the fittest, but thriving as the nurtured. And pretty soon, Homeboy becomes a sanctuary. And before too long, they themselves become the sanctuary that they sought. And then they go home and they present that sanctuary to their kids, and suddenly you've broken a cycle. Our program doesn't exist for those who need help. It's only for those who want it. And in the old days, I would ride my bike through the housing projects, kind of patrolling the 8 gangs. And I remember one night, very, very late, probably near midnight, I was straddling my beach cruiser bike, and I was talking to some homies in the darkness in this overhang in the projects. And I could look in the parking lot, and I saw this guy we all called Bandit. And Bandit was running up to cars, and he was selling crack cocaine. And then he was counting his money as he walked back to where the group was. He didn't know I had arrived in the meantime. And I wish I could say he was overly embarrassed that I was there, but not so much. He was kind and gentle, but he turned down every offer I ever gave him to redirect his life, until one day he walked into Homeboy Industries. I couldn't believe my eyes. And I said, "Y ese milagro that you've walked in here." And he said, "I'm tired of being tired." And so he began in our 18-month training program. He had a case manager and a therapist. He went to anger management class. He got his tattoos removed. He started to learn how to transform his pain so he didn't have to transmit it anymore. And then he found his true self in loving, which is the point. And so one of our job developers found him a seamless job after his 18 months with us. It was a low pay, entry-level warehouse kind of job. But after 5 years, he was, the floor manager, and years later, he was promoted even further. And I hadn't heard from him in a long time, and no news is good news. But one Friday afternoon, he calls me kind of in a panic, and he says, "Gee, you gotta bless my daughter." And I said, "¿Qué pasó, mijo? Is she sick? Is she in the hospital?" "Oh, no. On Sunday, she's going to Humboldt College." Imagine my oldest, my Jessica, she's only 18 and she's a tiny chaparrita, and well, Humboldt's far. It's way up north. And I don't know, we're scared. Do you think you could give her a blessing before she goes? And I said, "Sure. Tomorrow is Saturday and I have baptisms at 1. Why don't you guys show up at 12:30? We'll do a little send-off." And Bandit was married and had 3 kids. And the whole family shows up at exactly 12:30. And so I say, well, let's put Jessica in front of the altar and let's surround her with our bodies, and everybody touch her, and everybody put your hands on her shoulder. Go ahead, put your hands on her head. And I tell them to bow their heads and to close their eyes. And as the homies say, I do a long ass prayer. I go on. And somewhere in the middle of this prayer, I notice that we've all become chillones. We're all crying. And I don't know why we're crying, except for the fact that Bandit and his wife do not know anybody who's ever gone to college except me. Certainly nobody in their families. And so, we wipe our eyes and we laugh about how mushy we got. And to change the subject, I look at little Jessica and I said, hey, what are you going to study at Humboldt College? And she was very quick, forensic psychology. And I go, damn, forensic psychology? And Bandit chimes in, yeah, she wants to study the criminal mind. And Jessica turns and looks at her father and very deadpan does one of these, and Bandit sees her and laughs and says, yeah, I'm going to be her first subject. And so we go out to the parking lot and big abrazos, and everybody piles into the car, but Bandit hangs back, and I'm glad he has. And I look at him and I say, can I tell you something? I give you credit for the man you've chosen to become, for choosing to walk in your own footsteps. I'm proud of you. And his eyes well up with tears. And he says, ¿Sabes qué? I'm proud of myself. All my life, people called me a lowlife, a bueno para nada, a good for nothing. I guess I showed them. I said, yeah, I guess you did. Oh, nobly born, remember who you really are. The Christmas carol says, long lay the world in sin and error pining, till he appeared and the soul felt its worth. And yet it's about Jesus, and yet it's about Christmas. But how is it not the job description of every graduate of Marquette University? You appear, and the soul feels its worth. We see people at the margins, and we all inhabit our nobility and dignity. We look each other in the eye and we say, you're here, you're here. And the soul feels its worth. Marquette is not the place you've come to. It was always going to be the place you go from, and you go from here to sing the song without the words and to never stop at all. You are the only delivery system of hope that makes any sense in our world. People who choose to be the notice of God. And you brace yourselves. And pretty soon you cease to care if anyone accuses you of wasting your time at the margins. For in this place of which you say it is a waste, there will be heard again the voice of mirth and the voice of gladness, the voices of those who sing. thank you very much.
Father Boyle, it is an incredible honor to have got to hear you speak this evening. We welcome you to the Chapel of Holy Family here. Are you willing to do a little bit of Q&A now to kind of hear some?
Absolutely.
Awesome. Does anyone want to get started? Rachel? I'm going to relay it to Father Boyle.
Yeah. So Father Boyle spoke a lot about, he spoke a lot with, say, like homies and homegirls, and very focused on one with the homies and homegirls, which is a very core value of servant leadership, which is obviously a very big part of Marquette and the Jesuit values as a whole. I was just wondering how the idea of servant leadership plays in to your role in founding Homeboy Industries and what you do every day.
Okay.
I'm
Did
sorry,
you hear that?
I couldn't hear any of
Yeah,
that.
I can relate it to you. So, Rachel kind of just mentioned that a huge aspect of being at Marquette is servant leadership, and she just wanted to hear like how that kind of played out in starting Homeboy Industries and how it plays out in your every day-to-day life.
Well, it's an excellent question. I think you know, you don't go to the margins to save, rescue, or fix people. You don't go to the margins to somehow alter things for them. You go there to be altered. And, you know, I think a lot of times this sort of is the flip side of the burnout question, because people will always, you know, so even workers at Homeboy, senior staff sometimes will say, I guess I'm just too compassionate because I'm just feeling sort of burned out. And, you know, I always gently tell them that I think they feel that way because they've been doing it incorrectly. That if you go to the margins to save and fix people, then you will be depleted. But if you go to the margins to delight in people, it is eternally replenishing. So it's the leadership that doesn't try to save the day, but just kind of receive people. Many years ago when I studied theology at Weston School of Theology, we were able to take courses at Harvard. And I had a class on ministry, a team taught by Henry Nouwen and Parker Palmer. So it was kind of high powered. And I remember some woman asked Henry Nouwen, you know, what is ministry anyway? And he was kind of frustrated. And he said, can you receive people? And that's always stuck with me. It was the only thing I remember from that class. But it also reminds me of, there was a guy in Houston, I was giving a talk, and it was a young guy came up to me after the talk, and he was a gang member, tattooed, had been in prison, but now he was working in the streets of Houston trying to kind of do what we call a hardcore gang intervention worker. And he was very frustrated, and he kind of pleaded with me he was very earnest, and he said, how do you reach them? Meaning gang members. And I found myself saying to him, for starters, stop trying to reach them. Can you be reached by them? And I think it's counterintuitive, but I think that's what leadership is all about. Can you receive people? Can you be reached by people? Can you go to the margins and allow your heart to be altered? So it's the opposite of things.
Awesome. Thank you very much, Father Boyle. Does anyone else have a question? Oh, you want to? Oh, we can do next.
So obviously, a lot of stories around experiences, and I just wondering if there's any one story or anecdote that really like how it's important or anyone that everyone can know or feels out.
Awesome. I don't know if you heard that, but she asked, did you ever have any story or experience that you would want anyone that you come across to know?
Well, yeah, I've written 2 books of stories that I would want, maybe people to know. And I just turned in my 3rd book to my editor. So, yeah, I don't know. I mean, they're all in the early days, because the demonizing was writ large, and at Homeboy Industries, for the first 10 years of our 33 years were marked by death threats, bomb threats, and hate mail. Never from gang members, but from people who had demonized gang members. And it was a short hop to demonize me for helping them. And so in the early days, stories I shook my fist, and they were they were more frustrating and frustrated. And I was always trying to put a human face on a person who had been demonized in our society. It's probably not so much like that now. Now it's more just kind of delighting in people being so extraordinary, and the day won't ever come when I have more courage, or I am more noble, or I am closer to God than the thousands and thousands of men and women I've been privileged to know. So I guess I tell stories that I want to reveal their hearts so that people can say, oh yeah, we belong to each other. The great John Lewis said, we all live in the same house. And he doesn't say, even though some people live on the 3rd floor and others in the basement, he says, we all live in the same house. It's not an aspiration. He doesn't say one day we might all live in the same house. No, he says it straight out. We all live in the same house. And it's a statement of fact waiting for us to recognize and to realize. And once we realize it, we will become it. We will inhabit it. It'll become our truth. And the problem is we've forgotten that we belong to each other. And if that's the problem, then the solution is reminding each other.
Awesome. Next question. Awesome. So she asked, what are ways she can show tenderness of the heart during these times of, during just these current times? And Claire, was it? Yeah, she also mentioned that she read your book, one of your books, Tattoos on the Heart, and she said it was really amazing. So.
Yeah, I mean, these are obviously challenging times. So, I never Zoomed until the pandemic. Every Tuesday night I have a kind of, I suppose you might call it a Bible study with all these homies. And when I signed off last night, I thought, wow, we've been doing this now for 11 months, every Tuesday night. And we're always moved to tears at people sharing their lives and their stories and their faith, and gang members who, honest to God, if their stories had been flames, you'd have to keep your distance, otherwise you'd get scorched. And that never would have happened without the pandemic. I mean, it's been, in fact, I dedicate my third book to my Tuesday night group. It's kind of an extraordinary thing. But texting, I'm the mad texter now, and even homies, you know, email, which never happened before. But like, I have all these homies I call my dearly deporteds who have spent a time in prison but weren't born here, so they get deported. And I got an email in the early part of when we were all talking about PPE, you know, and he just, big, huge block letters. He said, "We are your mask." And that was it. And I knew exactly what he meant. It was his way of holding, his way of cariño and tenderness. It was his small gesture. There are all these boxcars of tenderness that you have to, that they're gestures. So if, you know, love is the answer, and community is the context, but tenderness is the methodology. And if love doesn't become tender, it just stays in the air or in your head or in your heart. But tender is when it becomes connective tissue. It's the thing that joins. And so you have to be attentive to it. Because if you get distracted, then your kindness gets forgotten. And you don't want to forget your kindness. And so we're distracted only all the time. And so you want to safeguard your attention so you can be absolutely tender with the person in front of you. A homie named Yeri, who's from Honduras and a gang member, and he told me the other day, and here we're in the pandemic, so we're wearing masks, we're at a distance, we're constantly wiping everything down, but the mayor considers us an essential organization, so we've never closed. And he joined us during the pandemic. So I always think maybe people didn't get the full-blown cultural thing of Homeboy, like before the pandemic, it's constant hugs and morning meeting, and everybody, the camaraderie is thick. But he said to me, sometimes I feel indifferent, which seemed like a very odd word for him to say. He says, but whenever I do, I think of this place and I feel passionate, which is also an odd word to use. And you blink and you miss it, and you don't want to miss it. You don't want to be distracted by anything. You want to be attentive enough to, in every moment, be anchored in the present moment so that you can find your true self in loving. And that's the whole 9 yards, my joy, yours, your joy complete, as Jesus says, and that's where you find it. See, one question gets a long ass answer, so maybe we just need 2 more.
Awesome. Does anyone want to go next?
Or not.
Oh, we have one right here.
At what point in your life did you recognize your vocation to the Society of Jesus?
Okay, so she asked, at what point in your life did you reflect / consider your vocation to the priesthood and the Society of Jesus?
Well, I think priesthood was sort of an afterthought. I mean, Jesuit was what I felt drawn to. I was taught by the Jesuits. This was during the Vietnam War, and all the Jesuits who taught me had these two things that I admired. They were prophetic and they were hilarious. And for me, that was kind of a good combo burger. I love both of those things. And, you know, so people like Daniel Berrigan and then all the Jesuits I knew, and you could never do this nowadays, but it was like, you know, forget parent permission slips. We didn't have cell phones. I mean, I can't even believe we did stuff like this, but we'd hop in a van, whole bunch of us with Jesuits, and we'd drive up for the day to San Francisco to the largest anti-war rally in the country and not sleep a wink and drive home afterwards. And there was a kind of like you'd call your parents from a payphone, hey, we're driving to San Francisco to this march. And okay, be safe. Okay, see you when you get home. I mean, that would never happen today. I mean, are you kidding me? And yet it was wild, and it just galvanized a kind of a spirit of living the truth as if it were true and putting first things recognizably first. And it was a way of living the marrow of the gospel, which was very attractive to me. And so I looked at these Jesuits and I said, I'll have what they're having. But, you know, priesthood was so secondary. Oh, I guess priesthood, yeah, that'll happen 13 years into this. But it was primarily wanting to be a Jesuit. And so next year it'll be 50 years. And I wouldn't trade my life for anybody's.
Amazing, amazing. I'm beyond words with this excellent night that we've had. So that concludes questions. And Father Boyle, I just want you to know that on behalf of the students here at Marquette, I welcome you to the Marquette community. You make our community stronger. And I'd also like to throw a quick shout out to and our greetings to all the people at Homeboy Industries. And just thank you. Thank you for your time, ministry, and witness. And I think we should all give them a great round of applause.
Thank you very much. Thank you. Thank you very much.
Awesome. It's been a pleasure. So that kind of concludes the whole talking portion of this. We are now going to move into our worship part of tonight, with it being Ignite. So Ashley can come up and join us and get us started.
Okay, hello. Okay, so this next portion of our night, we're going to transition into a little bit of musical worship. So I'm going to plug in my phone and we'll play some music for everyone. This isn't going to concern you guys exactly, but for us in the room here, please, I encourage you to engage with the worship in whatever way you like. Pray on it, meditate over it, just sit back and enjoy and relax. But we ask that you don't sing, and that doesn't concern you guys. But so, yeah, if you guys just want to join me in prayer before we get started. I thank you that you brought each and every one of us here. I thank you for the work that Father Boyle has done and the mission that you've put on his heart. I thank you for your love and for your grace and that you sustain us, Jesus. And as we go into this time, I pray that you open our hearts and our minds and our souls to anything that you may have for us. In your name we pray. Amen. Okay. This one.
was my mistake.
And with that, Ignite says, amen. Awesome. Could you go through this? Do I control the slides? Or- Okay, could you, yeah, could you keep going through this? There's gonna be a few lyric ones, so. Can I go through like all of these? Yeah. Yeah. Awesome. Okay, one more. Awesome. Now we're going to move on to announcements, guys. Our first announcement for you guys is that there's going to be a prayer service for national unity. That is next Thursday at 8:30 p.m. here at the Chapel of Holy Family. It is being sponsored by Campus Ministry and also the college Republicans and college Democrats student organizations on campus. It is an excellent opportunity to pray together for greater national unity and a shared commitment to the common good of all people. And then another announcement, next slide, is Ash Wednesday. Oh, next week's topic is Ash Wednesday prayer service with Ash distribution. So be sure to sign up on the campus ministry, social media platforms, the website. During the Ignite time this week in the Chapel Holy Family, we'll be hosting our own ash distribution. So come get ashes sprinkled on your forehead or on the top of your head this year because of COVID. So yeah, that is next week. And then I'm gonna hit next. And before I send you guys off, I first want to say thank you to all of our online viewers that we have had tonight. It's been a thrill having all of you join us tonight. And then also for everyone else, be sure to check out the rest of our Mission Week events going on with throughout the rest of the week. And also with the conclusion of Mission Week at the 6 p.m. Mass at the Church of the Jesu. And yeah, we'll see you guys next week. Please wait in your seat. Rob will come around and dismiss you guys for everyone here in the Chapel family. So on your way out, if you see someone, you could always strike up a quick conversation about that wonderful talk that we had from Father Boyle tonight. So Ignite out.